All right, welcome back, everyone. It's time to get started with our next session. Bailey, can you just chat me really quickly? Let me know that you are back and here before we get started. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, Bailey, and you can take over. Next up, we have Metadata Justice at the University of Oklahoma Libraries with presenter Bailey Hoffner of University of Oklahoma Libraries. Members of ArchivesSpace have long been interested in working to identify and rectify systemic forms of prejudice that are built into our organizational systems and software. This work is not always easy to carry out directly within ArchivesSpace, but there are plenty of ways to approach the work which positively impact our ability to make ArchivesSpace more inclusive and useful for all of our users. After a successful proposal to change the Library of Congress subject heading for the Tulsa Race Massacre from Tulsa Race Riot to the more currently used and accurate term Tulsa Race Massacre, a task force at the University of Oklahoma Libraries, which had formed around that initiative, determined that a more permanent group would be both a useful and essential way to continue this work in central Oklahoma. The Learning and Working Group on Metadata Justice formed out of that decision and has since made significant headway on similar work, consulted with outside groups, and built foundational documents to ensure the continued success of the group's initiatives into the future. This session will discuss the general Library of Congress subject heading proposal process and lessons learned from the Tulsa Race Massacre proposal, the Metadata Justice Group's approach to work and major areas of work with examples, ways in which this work has impacted and/or been integrated into their use of ArchivesSpace. Bailey Hoffner is the Metadata and Collections Management Archivist at the University of Oklahoma Libraries. She's particularly interested in investigating ways in which metadata and descriptive practices have the power to uphold or dismantle the structural racism, sexism, ableism, and discrimination inherent in their creation and use. She currently bottom lines the ArchivesSpace Implementation Working Group and the Learning and Working Group on Metadata Justice at OU Libraries. She's also a poet and regular contributor for World Literature Today. Bailey, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Can everyone hear me all right?
We can hear you.
Yay. Thanks, Jessica, and thanks to everyone involved in making this member forum happen again this year. I know it doesn't just happen. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, so thank you. And thank you for having me here to talk about this. One thing I forgot to include in that bio is that I'm also currently the vice lead for the member engagement sub-team of the ArchivesSpace User Advisory Council. So I just wanted to make sure and throw that in too, because I get so much from my participation in that group. So, let's make sure my clicker is going to work. What we'll talk about today, we will deal with the relationship between metadata justice work and ArchivesSpace, but we'll spend the majority of our time together outlining some of the foundational work we've done as a group, which has been essential to our ability to pursue metadata justice projects within and relevant to ArchivesSpace. So we'll start by discussing the origins of the Metadata Justice Group at OU Libraries, digging into the work of the Tulsa Race Massacre Task Force, technical considerations that went into the Library of Congress subject heading change proposal process. Then we'll pivot to discussing the Metadata Justice's guiding principles and approach to work, after which we'll get into more detail of how this work relates to ArchivesSpace and our future plans. Finally, we'll wrap up with some necessary expressions of gratitude and contact information for the group. So before we even get started, I'd like to briefly introduce just a couple questions that I am and we are as a group continually grappling with. So I'm just going to read these as a way of helping us all to enter this space thoughtfully. How can we continually work to create archival description that is more accurate and more respectful to all of our users? How might we grapple with and address forms of discrimination, not just in our archival work, but in the structures of our workplaces themselves? How to balance the work of regularly updating the catalog and controlled vocabularies with the work of rebuilding library knowledge structures altogether. I introduce these questions as an invitation, as a way of acknowledging that as much as we are motivated by an urge to rectify structural inequities, our process is necessarily based in inquiry and a continual urge to learn and grow as individuals, as knowledge organizers, and as an essential university department. So how it all got started. I had just joined the team at OU Libraries in February of 2020, and very early on, my supervisor at the time mentioned that she had just noticed an update had recently been announced to the subject heading for the Tulsa Race Massacre, but that she was surprised to find out that the update had not been to change the authorized heading to the more currently used and accurate Tulsa Race Massacre, but instead remained Tulsa Race Riot. I was not an expert on this event by any means, but having lived in Oklahoma over the last 5 to 10 years, I had witnessed and experienced the rapid shift in naming brought about by the work of advocacy groups and members of the Black community in Tulsa. So I was also surprised and interested in finding out who made these decisions, how they were made, and why. Fortunately, I was not alone. I was already working with 2 colleagues on a presentation for members of the OU community titled Rooting Out Racism in Library Systems, Authority, Description, and Metadata. Having no real grasp on what a proposal would need to look like, we put out a call for other UL employees that would be interested in joining us in this work, and the task force was born. Many of you may have noticed 2 recent draft resolutions put forward at ALA, one specific to replacing the Library of Congress subject heading illegal aliens, which remains the current authorized heading, and another requesting greater transparency in the proposal process. The first has been referred to the ALA Committee on Legislation, while the second, related to transparency, was rejected by council. Though the resolution did not move forward at this time, and though the request for greater transparency is larger than the work we'll talk about here today, having experienced firsthand just how difficult it is to figure out the initial steps of this process, we'd like to do our part by sharing what we learned while working on and putting forward a Library of Congress subject heading change proposal. The first thing to know is that not just anyone can submit a change proposal or a proposal for a new heading. An institution must first belong to the Subject Authority Cooperative Program, or SACO, module of the Program for Cooperative Cataloging. Then, catalogers must complete specific training to be able to submit proposals. Those people then know the ins and outs of formatting and submitting the proposal. Fortunately for us at OU, we have a colleague with this training and deep experience in the world of cataloging, name authorities, and subject authorities. One of the most important things that our cataloging colleague has taught us about this process relates to this quote from the SACO manual. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I myself have spent a significant amount of time wrestling with the italicized sections of this quote and could probably talk for the whole hour about the complexity held therein. But for today, I'm just going to say that what we took away that was so important to the success of our proposal is that what we had to prove was that Tulsa Race Massacre had become the more currently used term in America today. Not that it was more appropriate, not that it was more culturally sensitive, though these were obvious essential motivators for us in wanting to address this particular subject heading. Changes to the Library of Congress subject headings are fundamentally about access and about what people call a thing most often. So the proposal itself is not a narrative or an essay. It is a formally structured list of mark fields for an authority record. When you look up an authority heading, like what you see in the image here, you're seeing the format required. The only place to make an argument for an updated heading is within the list of sources that you provide, those 670 fields. So to prove that Tulsa Race Massacre, as opposed to Tulsa Race Riot, was and is the more currently used term, our group dove into finding sources. We broke up the work so that different members looked into newspaper articles, government documents, etc., and so that our cataloger would only carry the burden of formatting and submitting amongst all of his other daily duties. So I wanted to give a couple of source examples First of all, it was incredibly important to our group that we include sources relevant to the topic, such as organizations in North Tulsa directly involved in advocating around recognition of the massacre and the thriving Black Wall Street that preceded it. So the Centennial Commission was an essential source for us to include. Additionally, I wanted to give 3 other examples that we found to be really powerful. One member identified a study guide produced by the Library of Congress that specifically used the term Tulsa Race Massacre, showing that they themselves had shifted in their use of language around this event. Another found a congressional record in which Oklahoma State Senator James Langford used the term Tulsa Race Massacre. This one felt especially powerful since this is technically the Library of Congress. And finally, we reperformed a basic Google search that had been included in the initial record and found that in little over a year, there was a complete inversion of the frequency of hits for Tulsa Race Massacre versus Tulsa Race Riot, showing just how rapidly and intensely this change in usage has occurred. And you can see that in the image here. So our approach from the beginning has been collaborative and interdepartmental with a focus on shared labor. I can't stress enough how essential this was to the success of our proposal, especially amidst the year that was 2020. It allowed for anyone interested in the work, regardless of their knowledge of cataloging, to participate. So we had archivists, catalogers, subject librarians, administrative staff, user services staff, and everyone brought different skill sets as well. There is a lot more to a proposal than just the technical piece. So these are other things that people were able to do and bring to our approach of instead of just one cataloger coming to try to get all of this done themselves, supporting and providing all of this work in the background before the proposal process, before and after. So we needed someone to keep us organized so that no one was duplicating work and we could aim towards deadlines. We needed researchers to find all of the best possible sources in a variety of different research avenues. We, of course, needed our cataloger to format and submit the proposal. And we needed outreach to the Black community in Tulsa. Both the Centennial Commission and the Greenwood Cultural Center were essential in this process. And fortunately, one of our members was already in contact with both of those. Finally, we needed to get the word out once the proposal was submitted, and again, once it was accepted. So just again, this approach of shared labor, and what I think is so powerful about the way that we ended up doing this is that it allowed us to harness all the different skill sets that we have here at OU libraries, and also allowed a lot more people to participate in a process that otherwise is usually just catalogers. So we were successful. That all of that research and work and learning in the beginning allowed us to have the greatest chance of success. And as you can see now, the subject heading is now Tulsa Race Massacre, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. It has been updated in catalogs across the world. And also here in Oklahoma, one of our members does outreach to the Oklahoma Libraries Association to make sure that others that don't have automatically updating catalogs were able to get it updated in their catalog, like you can see here on the right. But our group felt strongly that there was plenty more work to be done in this area. So we formed the Learning and Working Group on Metadata Justice. I want to take a moment to talk about membership, both as a recognition of a members that have found ways to bring their different skill sets to this work. So for example, we have one member who can't commit outside of our meeting times, but that member is an excellent note taker. And so he is taking notes for us for all of our meetings. We have other members that engage, that have important liaison contacts in the community, and that's how they participate. So lots of different ways to participate, and each of those has been essential to the success of our work thus far. But it's also as an open recognition of the ways in which we are and are not a proportionally diverse group. Both libraries and archives still struggle to have racially diverse workforces proportional to society at large and proportional to the materials themselves. For example, we have a lot of material that's made by, about, and for Native American communities in our Western history collections. At least 12 of the 14 members listed here are white or white presenting. That is not proportionally proportional to the materials in our collections. So acknowledging this up front allows us to be open and honest about what we can and cannot know, and also to recognize how essential outreach is to our work. We will come back around to this later in the presentation. So some more of the technical stuff as we were getting this all going. Anyone who's worked on a library committee knows there's a bit of bureaucracy always involved. We had to have this official charter with our mission and areas of focus. And I share it because even though it's easy to rag on the bureaucracy heavy way that we tend to work, this foundational work is and was essential in guiding us forward. It also allowed us to map out work beyond just Library of Congress subject heading proposals. So you can see those there in the areas of focus. In fact, we didn't think that just that charter was enough. So we recently completed the first draft of our guiding principles and approach to work. So here is a list of our guiding principles informed by things like the ArchivesSpace Code of Conduct. We outlined these 5 guiding principles, which I'll briefly introduce, but for anyone that is interested, we are currently in a comment phase within the group on this document, and will very soon, hopefully within the month, have a completed version that we'd be happy to share with anyone that is interested. So learning is the sort of the first essential step, which is to say that we will always have knowledge gaps, and that our first step will be to research and remain thoughtful in our approach to the work. After that, another guiding principle is listening, right? After learning, acknowledging that we still will need community input and committing to getting that input from appropriate community members, depending on whatever the particular subject heading or topic or project that we're working on is. And when appropriate, compensating those community members for their input. The next one is respect. Respect for one another, for the work that we're doing, and a willingness to take the words and lived experiences of others seriously. Remember when I said we really learned a lot from the ArchivesSpace Code of Conduct. I definitely was able to pull a lot of really great stuff from there. So not reinventing the wheel for this, but allowing other good work to inform the way that we approach our work. Then shared labor. So it's really essential for us that we work collaboratively, that we strive for a sense of shared ownership within the group, and that we share time and resources as we are able. And that one then leads into the final guiding principle, which is progress without pressure. This group formed during 2020, but I don't want the lessons that we learned from that time to be left in 2020. None of us in the group do. So with this one, we commit to prioritizing the mental and emotional health of group members above and beyond productivity and progress. And that one is really, really essential. And again, all of these are elaborated on a little bit more in that, that document. Our approach to work. So in line with that idea of progress without pressure, we have a couple different membership levels. There are working members who essentially are able to commit to attending meetings when they are able, volunteering to bottom line on certain projects, which I'll talk about, as basically just having a little bit more capacity to participate in the work. But we also wanted to make sure, especially since we are both a learning and working group, that we had a space for people who wanted to be in the loop, who wanted to be learning and stay engaged. And so we have affiliate members as well that may not have the capacity to participate actively, but are still important members of the group. Bottom lining or anchoring. So these two, this idea of bottom lining actually comes, in my understanding, from advocacy work. And it's essentially a way to move somewhat away from hierarchical organizations, hierarchical structures when we are trying to organize our work. And we can't escape hierarchy. We work, in a hierarchical organization, and it's useful at times. But with bottom lining, what we're able to do is have various levels of ability to participate, even for working members. So, for example, I myself bottom line for the entire group, which is probably the highest capacity level. So I have to be the most available essentially to the group, and I commit to doing that as bottom liner for the group. And what that just means is I'm making sure that we are organized. I am making sure we're moving forward on projects, those sorts of things. Additionally, other members of the group bottom line specific projects. So projects don't move forward unless we have a bottom liner. That encourages people to participate, not only when they have capacity, but also on the things they care about the most, which so far has been a really great way to approach this work. So we've got bottom lining of ongoing activities like our reading group, and then bottom lining of more termed projects. And so those are just different ways that people can participate in leadership within the group and shared labor. And then finally, we did develop a basic grievance process. We all know that we're all here for good reasons, but that's not necessarily enough for us to ensure that we are going to do this work in a way that is respectful to everyone, so that everyone in the group feels safe functioning within the group as exactly who they are, right? So our grievance process is a call-in focused process because we are working in community together. We have a first, second, and third call-in. Most grievances, we hope, will be resolved after that first call-in, which is essentially a conversation towards understanding. After the second one, if a particular problematic behavior continues, other members of the group will come in to support with resources to help ensure that no one person has all of the burden of trying to teach about whatever behavior is problematic. And then finally, a third call-in would be a step back from active membership, with always the invitation to continue learning and return once the behavior has been resolved. This process comes out of a hope to resist the functional uses of shame and punitive forms of justice in our own group dynamics. But as you can see there, it's a question mark, right? How do we resist those things and still ensure that this is a functional space in which respect remains one of our guiding principles? Project management, I just wanted to include this briefly to say, we have a number of ways of communicating and organizing. I don't know if it's going to let me click out to this link because I am in love with Airtable. I actually was introduced to Airtable through the member engagement sub-team with Brittany Newberry, and it's been a fabulous tool for us to organize our work. So I just briefly wanted to show, we have ways of easily saying, okay, here's where things are. We've got current projects ongoing, future, anything complete. So really tracking what we're doing. We also have a bottom liner. It sort of almost functions like Trello, this Kanban function. So I can go in and see exactly the projects that I am currently bottom lining, and the same for everyone else. It also has a built-in calendar. I'm just like, this is my unofficial sell for Airtable. I really think it's an excellent project management tool. And I think now, hopefully I'm back to full presentation mode here. Major areas of work So we are going to get to the part where we talk specifically about ArchivesSpace and about how this work has intersected with ArchivesSpace. But I do, again, I think it's essential that we talk about all the foundational work that we've done to get us to this place, because it's allowing us to function more within a sort of umbrella of understanding of why we're doing what we're doing, as opposed to very ad hoc jumping from here to there on projects. So I'll talk briefly about each of these. Outreach is definitely a key piece of our work, and you can see it happens in multiple different ways. I think because learning is so essential to our group, we see that both as our own learning and as our ability to help others learn. So we have a regular university libraries internal reading group that has been really fun, and one member bottom lines that. I think right now we are reading Emily Drabinski's Queering the Catalog, I think. Anyway, excellent article. And then of course we have a LibGuide where people can find information about the Metadata Justice group and how to contact us, presentations and papers like we're doing here today. And then general PR and marketing has been important as well. So reaching out about and promoting the work that's being done. I know for me, every time I'm on Twitter and I see something that Violet Fox is talking about in the Crit Cat world, I'm always really excited and motivated by hearing about this work happening in other places. So we try to participate in that as well. Of course, Library of Congress subject heading proposals. So we had the Tulsa Race Massacre change. We have also since submitted and had accepted a new subject heading for the Green Corn Rebellion, which was a socialist uprising in rural Oklahoma in 1917. Fascinating event. There are books about it, but there was not a subject heading about it. And so that was a gap that fell within our particular area of focus here in Oklahoma and kind of generally the Southwest. And then we're also functioning at times as a funnel, both technically and not technically. Some of the language around SACO and subject heading proposals is a bit confusing, but essentially because you have to have such extensive training to be able to submit proposals, we are open to working with other institutions that identify problematic subject headings that or just outdated or whatever else, that are willing to do similar work as what we did as a group in gathering sources and building out the research and everything, so that then our cataloger can help to format and submit the final proposal. Again, just hoping to not just demystify the process, but also open the process to more people to be able to participate effectively in changing and proposing new subject headings. Beyond Library of Congress subject headings, we're also looking currently at what our approach to a local subject heading change will look like for undocumented immigrants. Anyone that's interested in this work has heard about the work of the group at Dartmouth and the documentary Change the Subject, I believe is what it's called, all about the very problematic subject heading illegal aliens, which is still to this day the authorized subject heading. So a lot of institutions have made local changes, and we will soon be joining their ranks. We're meeting next week actually with some of our systems librarians about the technical things that we need to make sure and do to ensure that the local change that we make won't be overridden by all of our automatic updating that goes on and things like that. Liaisons. So this is in line with our general collaboration and wanting to collaborate and share labor that also extends beyond just our group. So we've got a liaison with the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Committee at the University Libraries. We have a liaison with OLA. We have a liaison with the UCO library here in Central Oklahoma and with the Carceral Studies Consortium here at the University of Oklahoma. And all of this allows us to just basically do more by sharing and collaborating with UCO. We're both pursuing a lot of the same kinds of things at the same time. So we're able to collaborate with them and say, hey, here are a bunch of resources we found related to this topic. Let's have a Google Drive folder where we can share these things and meet every once in a while to chat about how it's going. Collaborations, so similar to that, we also collaborate within and outside of university libraries. So we're hopeful in 2022 to have a joint task force on inclusive metadata with the University Libraries DEI committee. Again, working to have more of an umbrella approach as opposed to an ad hoc approach to this work. And that will be extending it outside of just archives and ArchivesSpace to the library catalog and the libraries at large, thinking about inclusive metadata. And that's based on UT Arlington put out a great presentation recently on their work to do something similar that we will be modeling ours after. And then again, working with UCO, as we kind of collaborate on some similar issues and projects we're working with the University of Arkansas on a change proposal that they wanted to see happen, similar to what we saw with the Tulsa Race Massacre. And then, of course, administrative stuff, the foundational documents that we have already talked about, documenting our workflows, which sounds boring, but gosh, is it helpful, and just general project management. So then down here at the bottom of these major areas of work, learning, growing, and brainstorming. This really feels like such a big piece of what we are doing. And the things listed here are all ones that are topics large enough that we don't have one specific project in mind, but they're things that we want to continue learning about and brainstorming about how to begin dealing with some of these things in the way that they are described. So undocumented immigrants, I already mentioned, we're thinking about, and as so many institutions are, describing disability, doing some learning in that area, thinking about and researching what other institutions have done to identify problematic subject headings. Native American subject headings. Want to talk about a massive undertaking? We've got a lot of learning to do. And we also have great potential to be an institution that could lead in this area because we have so many materials related to Native Americans. And then describing incarceration. This is a really new one of personal interest that I hope to see us continue learning about and brainstorming on. And I'll mention again that when we were thinking about how to formulate our work, how to guide our work, we did in that charter identify kind of a specific regional area that we wanted to be able to focus on, again, towards that idea of shared labor. Other institutions in other places are going to be better experts on things around near them that they engage with more often. Describing incarceration, unfortunately, Oklahoma is, we're experts on incarcerating people. So it sort of fits within our mission and directive because of that. So that's another one that we're going to be learning about and moving towards hopefully making some proposals around. So finally, how does this work intersect with ArchivesSpace? Done a lot of talking about how we formed the group, why we formed the group, the things that inform our work. But I wanted to definitely talk about some of the specifics of how this then intersects with ArchivesSpace. So if you will allow it, a terrible pun, thinking in and outside of the sandbox. The first one here is just implementing the changes that we either see from other institutions or make ourselves. Within ArchivesSpace, it's not going to automatically update our Library of Congress subject headings. Jessica, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we're there yet. So even if our catalog is automatically updating, we still have to go in and make those updates manually. So with Tulsa Race Massacre, we went in and we made sure that that was updated manually within our instance of ArchivesSpace. Dealing both broadly and specifically with outdated and offensive language in ArchivesSpace. This first one is a really great example. I've got a screenshot here of just some subjects listed, and you'll notice that clothing is the term following at the end of all of these. Not long ago, it used to be costume, and one of our members identified that and said, hey, this is really problematic, and it is throughout the collections. It is everywhere. Is there any programmatic way to approach this? And another member who happened to have those skills was able to, I believe, write a script that went in and identified those instances and then replaced them with clothing. So that is another way that we've been able to make some changes directly in ArchivesSpace. And then this reaches back to that task force that we hope to have, that we plan to have in 2022 with the broader approach to thinking about inclusive metadata at our University of Oklahoma libraries, working on a statement on the main ArchivesSpace page regarding outdated and offensive language. We have a draft of that now, and eventually we'll hope to have a statement that is more library-wide. Interest definitely in expansion of subject and agent capabilities and interoperability with ALMA to facilitate regular descriptive language updates. So this is more like not quite what we're doing yet, but what we hope to be doing is we hope to see and support the continued expansion of subject agent capabilities. We've seen some great expansion recently, but seeing that continue and also learning more about how we can integrate with ALMA to make it hopefully so that we eventually don't have to make all of these changes manually. Some future plans, there's that task force again that I mentioned, basic scripts for querying and batch updating via the API, and then possibly a presentation next year where we could say metadata justice 1 year later, what did we learn and what are some practical applications, so that you all could attend next year and get some real concrete, here is a GitHub with basic scripts we've been able to use that have been useful in this work, and here's what we learned. I would also say here that we really are interested in working with other institutions because we have the support of our library administration in having this group. We have the things that we are focused on, the subject headings we're focused on, the different projects that we're focused on, but especially when it comes to Library of Congress subject heading proposals, if you don't have the resources, if you're not a member of the SACO module, please reach out to us if you are interested in doing any of this work. The cataloging lab is also an excellent resource that I believe Violet Fox put together as well. So there's lots out there, and we into the future plan to hopefully work and collaborate with more institutions that are interested in doing this work. Finally, I think gratitude is really important. I had hoped to have a list of resources ready today, but I will have a list of resources that I can provide to anyone that's interested. And the group itself is just, we've got so many resources at this point from all the work that we've been doing that we would be happy to share that have been informative to our work, But I did want to take a moment to just share gratitude specifically for organizations like the Greenwood Cultural Center and the Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission. Without their work and without the work of the survivors, descendants, and their family members over generations to carry the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre forward alongside the story of a thriving community in Greenwood on Black Wall Street. Without that, we would not be here having this conversation today, and our proposal would not have been successful, because it is back to the beginning. To have a successful Library of Congress subject heading proposal, you have to prove, right, that is the currently used term. And it became the currently used term because of the advocacy of these groups and of these individuals. So that's just really essential, that we take a moment to acknowledge that with gratitude. And also, for me, we talk a lot within our group about balancing the technical considerations, right, of putting forward a subject heading proposal. They're very technical. A certain thing we have to prove. And then alongside our own personal motivations for doing this work. And so I like to mention this because I think even though we're doing very technical library work of changing subject headings, both the ability for us to do that and the implications of that are far more wide-reaching than we tend to think. We can't make these changes unless socially and societally we're making the changes in usage, right? And that comes through advocacy. Also, just the Crit Cat community. I've mentioned Violet Fox a couple times. I'm a big fan of her and Sanford Berman. We all are in the group. I didn't have time to look up the exact name of the group, but the Dartmouth group that worked on illegal aliens, and everything that we have learned from that process. Also, the University Library senior team here at OU. It's a big deal, actually, that we are able to have this group. You have to have a supportive senior team that's willing to say, yes, you can have 14 people working on this brand new committee. And they've been incredibly supportive. So I want to say thank you to them as well, to UCO Library for continuing to collaborate with us as we grapple with a lot of these things together, and obviously so many more, everyone that's in the group, everyone that has participated in the group over this whole time. So yeah, I think we've got a couple minutes left here, so we can do some questions and things, but I will say, when thinking about contacting us, please be in touch at any time. This email is a distribution list that goes to everyone in the Metadata Justice group, so that if you have a particular cataloging question, likely one of our catalogers is going to be able to answer you. If you have a question about how we use Airtable to organize our work, I'll be being in touch with you. But this will get to all of us. And I think that is pretty much everything that I wanted to say. Jessica, I am going to turn it over to you for questions.
All right. Thank you, Bailey. That was excellent, as always. I always look forward to your presentations, and really informative as someone who is not a cataloger by training. The whole subject heading proposal process, that was something new that I learned, and it sounds kind of frustrating. So we do have some questions in the Q&A. Please feel free to chime in with your own questions now. We've got some time. Sarah asked, you mentioned early in the presentation about your charter. Is that available online? And if not, would you be willing to share the text of the charter?
It's not at the moment, but we would absolutely be willing to. I would imagine eventually, I mean, the other thing is we're still relatively new. So eventually we could easily put a link up on our LibGuide. So what I will do is I'll share with Jessica. If I share stuff with you, can it be shared out?
Yes,
What's
for
the easiest
sure.
way to do that?
If
Okay.
you want to go ahead and share the link to your LibGuide with me, I can make that available with your presentation recording and slides and everything. And then
Cool.
as you update the LibGuide, that content will get added.
Awesome. Yeah, so very happy to share any of our documentation.
Great. And I was
And
going to ask.
I'm looking for that link right now for you, Jessica.
Okay. You can, no rush. You can email it to me later. But I was going to ask for that LibGuide because that sounded really useful. Another question in the Q&A, is the bottom line concept something your group came up with, or is it a widely used idea? Just curious to learn more. It seems like a great idea.
Yeah, definitely didn't come up with it. I learned about it in a local social justice advocacy group. And it was a way of, a way of sharing labor and leadership so that it definitely helps reduce burnout because people just commit to what they can commit to. And then even when they decide they can't, we have kind of a system in place for how to make sure we support them and move things over to someone else. So I wish I had a good resource on it because I actually just learned it like live working within an advocacy group. I've found more stuff online when I search for anchoring. So that I think of those two terms as really similar, bottom lining and anchoring. And so if you look at if you Google social justice advocacy anchoring, I would imagine you'll find some good resources that can better describe than I can right now in this moment what it looks like. But I really like it.
Thanks. You mentioned interoperation with Alma. So are you thinking updates could be done in Alma and then automatically update in ArchivesSpace, or the other way around?
So that's such a good question. And off the top of my head, I can't remember which integrations are even available at this point. Because I know there's an integration out there, I think. Yeah.
There is.
And
there's a webinar.
I don't know. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember if it goes both ways. I mean, the dream, right, would be someday that it would go both ways as appropriate, right? So if a subject heading was updated in the catalog, that then would automatically update in ArchivesSpace. But more important than that, initially probably we'll be looking more at, because ArchivesSpace is our platform of record for archival finding aids and description, it would be more important to have updates automatically going out from ArchivesSpace to Alma. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thanks. And that's definitely a discussion that can happen, outside of the forum on the ArchivesSpace member listservs and that sort of thing. We do have a question about Airtable. It seems really interesting. Is it an app?
So Airtable is like a super spreadsheet thing. It's a browser-based subscription, whatever. I just use the free version. But what I like about it, I mean, who doesn't love a good spreadsheet? Who among us doesn't love a good spreadsheet? And what it does is allow you to really easily create different views of your data. So yeah, it's just an online, it's kind of like, any other of the various project management tools that are out there. It just happens to be my particular current favorite.
It's really great for collaborative work. I think that for the community engagement sub-team specifically, which is where Bailey and I first learned about Airtable, it's been great to have this and be able to sort of work together as a team and view these, your boards, and sort of manipulate the data together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about Airtable because I'm not actually here advertising for Airtable, but it is a really awesome tool for project management. I use it in my personal life as well. Like I've got a whole one for gardening. Yeah.
Okay,
awesome.
Bailey, you you need an Airtable sponsorship, or maybe
Right?
another presentation at another time. All right. We are all caught up in the Q&A. If you have any last minute questions for Bailey, please drop them in. And Bailey did just drop the link to the LibGuide into the chat. So if you're looking for that, it's in the chat, and I'll make sure it also gets added to the program wiki with the recording and Bailey's slides.